Welcome back to Care Anywhere. On this special From the Bench episode, I'm joined by my colleagues Emily Say, TruMerit Senior Director of Global Affairs, and Lauren Herckis, Senior Director for TruMerit's Center for Global Research and Policy. Emily and Lauren have recently published academic research and a subsequent white paper on the topic of AI and credentials fraud, specifically around how AI is supercharging credentials fraud and making fraudulent credentials more problematic for evaluators and employers globally. We're going to dive in on how, why, and what can be done about it in this episode. So stick around. This episode starts right now. Critical shortage, maldistribution, climate impact, tech readiness, and career mobility. These are the challenges facing global nurses and allied health workers today. We're looking at the numbers, the data, and the research on this episode of From the Bench. Brought to you by TruMerit. Welcome back, everybody, to Care Anywhere. I'm your host, Lea Sims, and I have the pleasure of being joined by my colleagues here at TruMerit, Lauren Herckis and Emily C., and we are going to be talking about AI and fraud in the credentialing and credentialing evaluation space. And I can't think of two people who are more experts in this area than these two amazing women right here who have recently done a tremendous amount of research on this subject. We just published a paper a couple of weeks ago on how AI and fraud in the AI space is supercharging nurse credentialing fraud. And so we're going to dive into that today. Lauren and Emily, welcome. So glad to have you. Looking forward to the conversation. So I'd love to start out with just by having you introduce yourselves to our audience, let people know who you are, what you do here, maybe a little bit of your background, and then we'll jump into talking about this critical subject, including the success you've had in getting it published and getting some interest and eyeballs on such a critical topic. AI is certainly affecting the world, we could just say, in the largest sense, but especially in just creating things that are less than trustworthy in general, which we can talk about, and then how that's affecting this space. So Lauren, if you don't mind kicking us off with an introduction, that would be great.
Sure. Hi, Lauren Herckis. I'm the Senior Director of the Center for Global Research and Policy, part of TruMerit's Global Health Workforce Development Institute, which is a fantastic team where we focus new research and policy initiatives on the increasingly global and dynamic skills landscape of the mobile health workforce.
Wonderful. Thank you. Emily.
Hi, thanks so much for having us. I'm always happy to team up with Lauren anytime, and with you, Leah. So my name is Emily Say. I'm Senior Director in Global Affairs at TruMerit. So in my role, I support efforts relating to regulatory affairs, international relations, and global advocacy. I have 25 years of experience in credential evaluation. So that's the lens, or the hat I wear with anything credential evaluation. And of course, what comes with credential evaluation is fraud detection.
Yeah. And I want to make sure we don't assume our audience necessarily knows the nuances and complexities of even what credential evaluation is. So let's talk about that as we go through. But let's start with at the beginning. Can you talk a little bit, Emily, about credential fraud? Where do you see it? How prevalent is it? Where does it show up? And for those that might not understand what that means in a credential or a credential evaluation process, it would be great to explain that. What did that look like before AI? And then how is that evolving now with AI? I know that's a loaded question, so I'm giving you plenty of time to answer.
Yeah, Leah. Sure. So credential evaluation specifically speaks to assessing someone's educational and licensure credentials when they're trying to move from their home country or country of study into another country. So in terms of credential fraud, pre and post AI, of course, there are different types of fraud. So for example, you might actually start with a legitimate credential, but then some piece of information gets changed on it, right? So maybe it's the name on it or the grade, or it could be something that's a fake that's created entirely from scratch. And then, of course, there are paper-based credentials, which are fraudulent, and then digital credentials, which are fraudulent. So you have the gamut. But regardless, pre-AI, you really needed knowledge, materials and skills to be able to perpetuate or commit that fraud, or have access to someone that has the knowledge, skills, and materials. So knowledge being, for example, they need to know what the authentic credential should look like for that country of study, program of study, etc. And then so for skills, maybe if you're manipulating a legitimate credential, you have to make sure there's alignment, there are no smudges, that the font matches, that sort of thing. And then for materials, certainly the right paper or vellum, seals, pens, inks, embossing tools, even scanning and printing equipment. So for that area, you would almost even refer to it as a craft or artistry, right? To be able to commit paper-based, credential fraud. For digital fraud pre-AI, it's simpler or easier, but you still needed editing software and editing skills. Now with AI, it just removes all those barriers. You don't need the knowledge, you don't need the skills, and you don't need materials. All you need is a computer and access to the internet. And so it will create that credential for you. For example, now there are these things called template farms or document mills, where you can pick a credential that you want, drop in your details, your information, the image, and then have that generated. So AI really is a game changer in terms of making it accessible, more easy, and scalable.
But more difficult for people who are doing the evaluating. That's probably the challenge. I mean, you talked about an
100%.
art form. I know I've seen you put up examples of a transcript or a certificate, and all of the things in a paper certificate that you would look for that that an expert could really detect over time, just like counterfeit money. Just all of the things that you look for, and it takes some expertise to do that. But you remove that physical element out of it, and now everything's digital. I imagine that's making it a little bit more difficult. So let's pivot, Lauren, to you. AI is and obviously does a lot of things, which we're talking about. What should people know about AI and the fraud landscape, both on the side of the bad actors who are leveraging it to engage in fraudulent activities, and then on the other side, it has some implications as well for those who are trying to stay ahead of detecting it and mitigating it?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, as you said, AI is and does a lot of things. We have a tendency to say artificial intelligence or AI does as if it is just one kind of thing that we're talking about. But artificial intelligence has been around for more than 50 years and has been used in all kinds of different contexts. Most people have been using AI for decades without realizing it, with their autocorrect or their thesaurus in their Word document. The fact that now there is, as Emily mentioned, easily accessible access to a huge range of very powerful AI-enabled tools is a game changer, and that is very new. And it's moving so rapidly. These changes and the accessibility of these innovations has just accelerated exponentially. So I think the most important thing, you say, what should people know? Probably the most important thing to know about AI and the fraud landscape is that everything you know is already outdated. By the time you think you understand what some AI tool or tools can do, there are already innovations that have superseded or expanded or modified that. So because the technological innovation and our access to it changes so rapidly, keeping up is almost impossible. As the technology continues to evolve and regulators and evaluators continue to grapple with the challenge, we each try to stay one step ahead, but that process is going to just keep continuing and accelerating. So innovation on both sides makes everything a little more complicated. And that means as much as there is technological innovation and AI keeps changing and making new capabilities accessible to anyone who would like to take advantage of them, and fraudsters keep getting creative with the new tools and new approaches, regulators, evaluators, policymakers we all together need to collaborate in order to figure out what our next best steps are. It has to be a constant process of iterative improvement and collaboration and finding new ways to work together.
This paper that we just put out, the AI is supercharging nursing credential fraud, was based on some research that you guys have done sort of on both sides of that coin, and had published and have been invited to speak in various platforms about it. What did that research really reveal beyond what you've already said? How do we combat this? But that takes understanding, where are we right now? What did your research uncover about how well equipped we might be in the current state, and what it's going to take to maybe move that forward from standards or tech perspective. So, Emily, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, but what did your research reveal on where we are now?
Yeah. So, as Lauren mentioned, it continues to evolve and advance. So it really takes a concerted effort among all the different stakeholders and players to do coordination and collaboration, and that's the best way to beat that. So when I talk about all the different players, we have, of course, the credential evaluators, the regulators and licensing bodies, recruiters and employers. So when they're working together, it makes it harder for fraud to slip through. So more coordinated communication, for example, and then just collaboration. So we have coding experts who can create AI platforms, but they may not necessarily know the use cases, and they might not have the subject matter expertise per se from a regulatory perspective or credential evaluation perspective. So having these individuals and experts, come together, they can help create tools and mechanisms to help detect fraud and keep advancing in that area.
It's really about teaching the AI to know this space, and only our experts can do that. Lauren, your thoughts on that?
I agree completely with what both of you just said. It's about teaching the AI to respond to the current landscape with the really human and ever-changing expertise around what makes for effective credentials and what the current policies and requirements, regulatory requirements are in a diverse set of social and political contexts, and working together with the technologists who can build these tools, who may not know what they don't know. They work hard with subject matter experts who really know credential verification and credential evaluation, but they don't know what the gaps in their knowledge are. So we have to work with them as well in order to make sure that we're building the tools that can do what we want them to do. And beyond that, I think following the guidance that's offered by all kinds of professional and regulatory bodies that is starting to emerge on how to use these tools effectively, and maybe more importantly, how not to use them ineffectively. I think it's important to remember that AI doesn't work in intuitive ways. We may think we understand what we're doing and be missing big chunks of information about where the data is being drawn from, how the AI tools that we're using were trained or implemented. So not trusting your gut and making sure that you know exactly what you're getting when you work with those tools, even those created in partnership with experts, is really critical.
And this is encouraging, I think, I would think, for the credential evaluator community, where there might be some fear or concern, as there is everywhere, about what AI is going to do to transform core jobs and skills. But to me, anywhere I've worked in healthcare where the tech space has stepped in and made the mistake of not working with subject matter experts to build that technology, it always comes back to bite them in the end, because the people who use it every day understand, as you said, Lauren, the nuances of and the intricacies of it, are the ones who really need to be informing the technology. And I don't think AI is any different in that respect. I've seen plenty of technologies brought to the bedside in healthcare that weren't informed by nurses and were informed by tech folks who made assumptions about what that workflow would look like. And I think AI is the same, but I think it would be encouraging to credential evaluators to say we have to kind of sit above the technology. It elevates that knowledge and understanding to be able to shape the tool and not the other way around, which is what I think I'm hearing you say. So I think that's pretty important too.
Yeah, I would add AI is very good at extrapolating from patterns, from rules. And one thing that humans are really bad at is being predictable. If you look at human political systems, just the policy and regulation around the world, you will be hard pressed to find any pattern that is consistently predictable. People are unpredictable, and societies are unpredictable, and policymakers are unpredictable. And so while there are lots of ways that AI tools can integrate with or support credential evaluation and combat fraud, there are lots of ways in which it's just not well equipped quite yet to extrapolate from patterns in the data that exist and then apply that information to identify and capture new instances of fraud, or to apply what credential evaluators know and do to new cases.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find reliable information or guidance about AI and credential fraud? I don't, Lauren, if you want to jump in, and then Emily, where do we point people who are either very closely tied to the space or just need to, or have a stakeholding interest in where this whole discussion might be moving across the technology spectrum? Where do they go?
I think our threat landscape briefing is a really succinct overview. Beyond that, I think it really depends on where you sit in the space. I think regulators can collaborate across regulatory boundaries and can use NCSBN's falsified identity tracking system, or NERSIS, to communicate with other boards and share suspicious patterns. Credential evaluators, professional associations are starting to generate guidance, and individually they can tighten checks on foreign education comparability and fraud signals. There is an emerging body of literature that provides general guidance to practitioners and to regulators, but it is changing extremely rapidly. So check with your professional assation, I would say.
Yes. I think extremely rapidly is a default phrase for all things AI right now in general, but good. That's a great place to point them. Emily, any other thoughts there on where people can go?
Absolutely. For credential evaluators, I definitely have to echo the professional associations. The one that definitely comes to mind is the Association for International Credential Evaluation Professionals, TICEP. They have webinars, conference sessions on this topic, on AI in general, on fraud in general, and then where the two intersect. Just a shameless plug, they are going to be having their annual conference this fall, and they're going to be introducing a deep dive track or series on fraud. And I'm part of the fraud squad, so to speak, or team of trainers. So it's going to be focusing on fraud and fraud detection. I'm personally covering diploma mills, but my colleague Matt Switlinski will be doing digital fraud, and AI, of course, will feature prominently in that. I also want to mention the credential evaluation in Europe is more centralized, that work. So you have an ENIC-NERIC center in each country, and then together they form the ENIC-NERIC network. So they do collaborations and pilots and whatnot. So TruMerit, which is the Italian ENIC-NERIC, they're doing a Verif AI project, which focuses on verification, using AI for verification purposes. So I'm really excited to see what will come out of that project. But bottom line, us practitioners in credential evaluation, there's a community where we're sharing tips and best practices, what we found that works and doesn't work. And that's how we are able to stay on top of it, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've talked quite a bit here about AI in terms of, bad actors and fraud, but there's a lot of potential for AI to streamline and support the work that credential evaluators do every day as well. I mean, obviously that's that's a landscape to enter carefully and thoughtfully, how it's positioned and how it's built. But I don't know, Emily, if you wanted to speak to what's the potential of AI on the other side? Where will it help?
Absolutely. So AI already is providing tools and mechanisms for things like detecting if there was manipulation behind a credential or image. For example, if it's a PDF, you can look at the metadata to see, if there was any likelihood of tampering. But then again, when Lauren talked about the arms race, then there are tools where you can mask and scrub that metadata, right? But yeah, so the thing with AI, you can also be used to help check accreditation and whatnot to make sure it's a legitimate school and not a diploma mill or fake university. But the thing is that these tools are still, in my mind, young and still need further development and training. And the space continues to change is what it is.
There is always that next level. It reminded me when you said that, you guys probably keep an eye on this too, but there's the argument out there about professors and teachers who are now able to detect if their students have turned in papers that were generated by AI, but it's an AI tool that's analyzing and telling them that. So it's caused a lot of backlash from students. But it's, again, and now people are trying to figure out, how do I use AI and create that paper where it doesn't look like I've copied and pasted out of ChatGPT into my
Yes,
document
actually,
creation tool?
there are platforms that will help you make it less seem less AI generated. So
Yes.
again, they're already training that
Workarounds.
technology 100%. Yeah, it's
And then
nuts.
just the argument from an ethics standpoint is there anything wrong if these are the tools of the future for students to be leveraging AI to help them write their papers? And philosophical debates abound around all of those things in very interesting ways. That takes us off a little bit, but it reminded me of that when you said it. So let's talk about the recommendations, because the paper and the research does make several recommendations. You guys, I think, mentioned collaboration, which I'd love, Lauren, for you to expand on a little bit. And then we could talk a little bit about what tech can do to support some of that as well, and what we're doing here at TruMerit. So you want to walk through what those couple of recommendations were in the paper?
Sure, I can start. One area of collaboration that we recommended was for experts in credential evaluation and in regulation to work closely with innovators in the AI and technology space to build those tools that can be force multipliers for regulators and credential evaluators that can help folks do their jobs better and faster and more effectively, who can catch those fraudsters that otherwise might have slipped through the cracks. In order to do that, we need to work really closely together, and also maybe go slow to move fast. Every time there's a new opportunity, a new innovation that seems like it's going to solve a problem, testing it out and comparing it to existing processes and against benchmarks to ensure that we know what we're getting into and exactly what kinds of support it does and doesn't offer, can be a little challenging. But that's where that collaboration is key for folks who really understand the technology and folks who really understand the regulatory space and who really understand the challenges and opportunities of evaluation, to work closely together to create those next steps, those innovations that can serve as force multipliers.
True. Emily?
Well, and then just adding to that, just serving as advocates for those collaborations, because thinking about these partnerships isn't necessarily an immediate or natural thought. And so having regulators and other leaders in the field advocate for that, support it, even fund it, would really help move that needle.
And I would say advocating for and building opportunities for really task or role specific AI fluency is critical. What can AI do and mean for me and for my priorities or my organizational priorities? There are tens of thousands of AI learning opportunities out there. Anyone can go and learn about AI, but learning about what AI means for your particular challenge or job is much harder. So this is also an opportunity for collaboration, where experts in credential evaluation and experts in AI capabilities can work together to develop learning opportunities and informational materials that can help build that AI fluency.
Absolutely. Fluency is a big one. I think that's probably true across the board with everyone who's trying to figure out how to make it work for them right now and in different spaces. And knowing the boundaries, understanding, what it can do and what it can't do. So let's talk a little bit about, as we land here at the end, we're making some investments and really thoughtful steps towards building closed digital verifiable ecosystems where the hope would be that fraud becomes a little harder to squeeze in there or to fit into that picture. Not impossible, of course, but one of the recommendations, or the final recommendation in the paper, is to work with the tech space to create closed, secure, digital verifiable ecosystems where issuer and verifier and employer and stakeholders are all digitally connected through an encrypted space where it just would be very difficult for a bad actor or a fraudster to kind of position those tactics. Not impossible, but the hope would be diminishing them at least. So Emily, can you talk a little bit about that and maybe what some of the things that we're doing at TruMerit to take our fraud forward posture, into that tech space, into that digital verifiable credential space?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of leveraging technology, there are three touch points that I think of. So first is the application process, receipt process, the credential intake process, and then the actual issuance of our certifications and credentials. So when we talk about receiving the application intake process, we have started introducing identity verification, which is a quick and painless process, really, where the applicant has to provide a copy of an identity document, such as their driver's license. And then what happens is the system will check the legitimacy of that identity document and then do a live biometric or facial scan and analysis against that identity document. So that's one layer of the fraud detection or prevention. And then when we talk about the credential intake process, right, when we're receiving, for example, the nursing educational credentials or professional licensure credentials, we have what we call the credential transfer portal. So what we do is we carefully vet and approve schools and licensing authorities, whereby they can then upload the credentials directly into our portal. So we're controlling the chain of custody right there and taking it directly only from, again, approved, vetted issuing bodies. And then finally, you mentioned the digital verifiable credential space, which I'm really excited about. We are partnering with CreditVera for this. So now we're talking about the issuing stage of things. And so when we're beginning to issue certifications and whatnot as digital verifiable credentials, which means that we are providing them in the form of cryptographic proof of one's qualifications. So it makes it tamper-proof or tamper-evident. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. And more portable for, in addition
100%.
to its, fraud mitigating benefits, the benefit to the, global health worker is the ability to have their identity verified and bound to a digital wallet and a digital verified digital identity, and then all of their credentials being also validated and bound to that wallet becomes for them a passport of sorts for them to really not only move outward physically to pursue opportunity in the world, but move upward mobility in their careers, because they can share those proof points of their earned achievements more readily, which is exciting, I think, for all of us, certainly at TruMerit, where this is this is what we wake up to do every day, is to help global health workers be able to pursue career opportunity and career advancement, everywhere they work or want to work in the world. So it's the added benefit of knowing the assurance that they are who they say they are, and that they can take those credentials with them everywhere they go, is an exciting place for us to be moving, I think.
Exactly.
Yep. All right. I think we've covered it all. I don't know if either of you have any final thoughts that you want to share. I want to let everybody know they can find that paper that we just published, Lauren and Emily's research. AI is supercharging nursing credential fraud. You'll find that on the TruMerit website. We also just published yesterday a follow-up sort of secondary piece, follow-on to that one, which is a white paper we've published with Credivera about just what Emily was talking about, how digital verifiable credentials, that secure ecosystem will help address some of these fraud concerns we've been discussing today on this podcast. And so we'd encourage you to go out and grab both of those and take a look at them, and then reach out to Lauren and Emily via LinkedIn. If you have more questions, I'd send them your way. You can find them out there. They are experts in this area, and I'm so grateful for you guys coming on the podcast today, taking time out of your schedule to share your research and your insights and experience on this. I know it's beneficial to our health worker audience, to credential evaluators who we hope will tune in from your shared networks as we move forward. So thank you guys so much for joining today. Appreciate it.
Thank you
So
for
grateful.
the invitation.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, that's the end of this episode. We'll see you next time on Care Anywhere. Thanks for tuning in to this From the Bench special episode of Care Anywhere. You can find TruMerit research by visiting our research hub at TruMerit.org. If you're new to Care Anywhere, you can find all of our podcast episodes, including From the Bench, at TruMerit.org/podcast or on your favorite podcast streaming channel.